Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Productivity Mastery, a special episode. I'm bringing back a guest we already had on the podcast, I think maybe 3 years ago. Remi, would you say 3 years ago? Why is it a special episode? First of all, because the person here has so much to share, and you experience that in the next 60 minutes. But also because Remi was my favorite teacher in the business school. Dr. Remigiusz Smolinski, professor in negotiation. For those of you who don't know me well, my major in the business school in Denmark, in Aarhus, was actually not around negotiation. It was finance. So we would study, hardcore econometrics, mathematics, finance, estimating returns, all those kind of things. But then one morning, I decided to sign up for a summer course in negotiation. It was an elective, and I'm happy I did because I experienced what was a master class, I would say, in teaching. I got really passionate about negotiation after the course, but it was the way my guest today approached this subject, the teaching, that inspired me the most. Remi, thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast, and thank you for being such a committed educator, first of all.
Thank you so much, Stan, for having me. I'm a repeated offender already on the Productivity Mastery podcast, and it's always good to be back, Stan. And congratulations on your stellar career ever since we've met. It seems that every year you've been exceeding your own goals and expectations. So keep going, keep inspiring people with your talks and with your podcast.
I appreciate it, Remi. Coming from you, it has even bigger weight. So thanks for being back. Thanks for being a giver. And I can't wait to talk about your new book. But before we get there, because it's been 3 years since you came to the podcast, I think we should establish a little bit about the subject of your academic career, of your industry career, but also of your book, negotiation. One of the first things that I remember from your class, it was probably the first couple of days of the course, is when you established to us how important actually negotiation is, not just for business, but also for individuals in your personal life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having such a great memory. I tend to forget what I say in my classes, but I'm glad that at least some students remember. Yes, I still keep telling everyone who's willing to listen that negotiation is probably one of those skills that have profound implications and profound impact on economic well-being. And at the same time, also on the happiness that we end up with in our lives. Yes, economic well-being, that's quite clear, because very often situations which create monetary returns require certain coordination, certain agreements, be it salary negotiations, to take the simplest context, all the way to large deals, collaboration or cooperation agreements or partnership agreements between companies. Usually the purpose of such is to determine how to create more value together than we can on our own, and therefore usually it has a measurable impact on each of the parties that are involved, which means if we know how to do it, we end up with more wealth. Yes, be it for ourselves in contexts like salary negotiations, or for our constituencies, for the companies that we work for, when we represent them, for example, in in partnership agreement negotiations or M&As, and larger or smaller business deals, when we buy, when we sell, right? So there's a monetary component to it, yes, which makes us and our companies wealthier. But there's also another often forgotten dimension to negotiation skills, and that is measured, which is measured in happiness. As I always tell my students that they should never hook up with someone who's a bad negotiator, because that will be a permanent source of disappointment. And I do believe that when people decide to live together, Yes, where people decide to build a family together. That's a commitment which is likely to be tested frequently in situations where we still want to do it together, but have a different opinion on what how we would like to do it. And the ability to manage, navigate such situations is very critical, because either these conflict situations will destroy, or might have a potential to destroy this relationship, or strengthen it. And it lies solely in the in the negotiation skills of those who are affected by it. Yes, so that's why I keep on saying that no matter what, each of us is a negotiator. I know this is nothing new, but doing it well has a huge impact on how we live our lives. Yes, both in terms of very economic, financial measures, right? Meaning how rich we end up being, but as well, but also in terms of how happy we end up living our lives in relationships that we decide to build.
You talk about creating value. It's one of the core things we do as negotiators. And I have to say, ever since I finished your course, it's been more obvious for me, especially joining the business world. By the way, I finished your class 2011, I believe.
That
It's
makes
been
me feel
so.
old, Stoyan. That makes me feel very, very old.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I've been fascinated to see so much value being left under the table in so many different business occasions, because people just don't talk. They focus on positions, and there's so much value that could be generated, but it's just not being observed, and people are fighting over a number, for example, but they don't see the whole picture. Can you maybe share what does it mean creating more value? How can we see things from this angle?
Oh yes, that's a very correct observation, and indeed, as I mentioned, companies and people people maybe not, but companies get together, organizations get together, if they believe that together they can generate more benefits that they cannot on their own. Which means the sum of the competencies of two or more players needs to be larger than each of them individually, and that's exactly the value that they expect to create. Yes, this value can be sometimes very clearly measured in terms of additional revenue, in terms of improved profitability, or reduced cost, which is improved profitability, regardless whether we look at top line or bottom line. Uh, uh, Companies work together if they believe that by extending the boundaries of their corporate boundaries, they can achieve more. Yes, and that's exactly the value. That's exactly the value. This is how does value. Let's say how does value how we can how can we take advantage of this value? Well, this is a very, very simple mechanism, which we've known at least since David Ricardo, ever since David Ricardo formulated his theory of comparative advantage. And I don't want to sound too theoretical right now, but basically his recommendation or observation was very simple. He said, well, if we have something in abundance, something which is cheap to us and valuable to the other, and somebody else has something else which is very cheap to them or very available to them, but valuable to us, it's a no-brainer if when we exchange these two against each other, we will create value for each other, because we will be giving in on things that are relatively less important to us in order to get something that is very important to us. And that's exactly the nature of exchanges that lead to value creation. There are only two possibilities to create value. One of them is through exchanges, as like I just described. Yeah, I need to know my order of preferences, what is important to me, number one, number two, number three. And in a negotiation process, I need to figure out what might be important to our negotiation partners. to investigate whether it makes sense to trade off something from the bottom of my priority list that might be very important for my negotiation partner in exchange for something at the top of my priority list. So that's one of the ways how value can be created. The other one is simply by adding additional aspects, additional areas in which we could extend our cooperation. By doing so, the cake, the amount of benefits becomes larger. We still need to figure out how to share it and who gets what and how much. But in general, value creation negotiation is that simple. That simple, very simple. The only thing is that it's not intuitive. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy because our intuition pushes us towards the middle. As it means you are here, I am there. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. The problem is only that usually our preferences are more or less monotonic, which means the more the better. Yes, and optimum value cannot be created somewhere in the middle. It usually is somewhere at the edges. Yes, which means to create the most value out of any negotiation context, I would have to insist on getting the maximum of what's most important to me, and so does my negotiation partner. And that's not very intuitive. That's something that needs to be trained.
Let's maybe give a case to the audience. Let's say I'm here, Remi, and I have these headphones, and I say, Remi, these headphones, I want to sell it to you for 50 euro. How do we approach this conversation so we can create more value and we can make an effective negotiation here, for example?
Switch it to a pen and you would sound like Jordan Belfort. That would be even better. Yes, and sell me this pen. Yes, that would be a better challenge. So the situation that you described, Stoyan, is something which we would normally call a distributive negotiation, where there is one object, one price, and the price, the agreement that we hopefully ultimately would find would split the available benefits into two portions. Yes, so you would probably get a surplus, which is a difference between what you originally wanted to sell it for and the price you get. And I would get a surplus between, let's say, my budget for it and the difference between my budget for it and the price I ultimately end up paying. So this is an example of a win-lose, so-called win-lose situation, where for you to get more, I would have to get less. Yes. So the way out of it usually, which I strongly discourage my students or executives or clients to reduce their negotiations to one dimension only, because one dimension means that there is a loser and there is a winner. Yes. So the first thing I would recommend is to add a pen to it, add a pen to headphones and see who needs what more. Yes, or whose willingness to pay exceeds the minimum expected value for the other. Yes, and when we have two objects, and differences in preferences between those objects, meaning for you, I don't know, maybe headphones are more valuable than a pen, and for me, maybe a pen more valuable than headphones, then it becomes possible to create value by giving each of us what we value more, relatively more, right? And then the cake becomes larger. This is not possible with one dimension. This is not possible in one dimension. In one dimension, per definition, what you get is what I lose, and that is bound to create a certain, not always directly related, but somehow influence our satisfaction. We somehow might be aligned with where we end up in our agreement. However, when we increase the number of objects, or so-called negotiation issues, then it becomes possible to make us both winners. Yes, meaning that you get the maximum on what's the most important for you, and I get the maximum of what's important for me. Yes, and that creates how do I say, symmetric satisfaction, or that creates a potential for symmetric satisfaction on both sides.
So, for example, if I know you have a car, I can say, all right, Remi, I can give it to you for 30, but you have to drive me to work 3 times this week. And
Something
it's on
like
your
that.
way. It's on your way, so
Exactly.
you're not going to go any
Exactly.
further.
Exactly. So, and you get, I don't know to what is the weather like right now, but let's assume if it was cold, raining, and nasty outside, and by taking a ride together, you would have a pleasant atmosphere, warm seat, and dry hair at the end. When you get to work. We would have a nice conversation. I would have the headphones, and we could all perceive that deal as a win-win, although no money is flowing in either side.
Since you also spend a lot of time in the industry, not just in academia, and you observe how the business is, do you think people don't spend enough time on preparation and actually having this kind of analysis and creativity before they enter a negotiation? Is that how the reality is these days?
I think the biggest problem is, let's zoom out a bit. Yes, I think we've just launched and just published a paper based on the last 20 years of our observations of hundreds, if not thousands, of negotiations, and what we notice is that in general, people are not good negotiators. Yes, because good negotiation is counterintuitive. Yes, or wise negotiation is counterintuitive, at least for many. Yes, normally there is a very common misconception that a good negotiation is meeting somewhere in the middle. Yes, that a good negotiator is someone who is tough, eh, and none of this is correct. None of this is correct. It's our intuitive response based on certain cultural norms of uh, of uh, of give and take. Yes, and which usually gravitate towards the middle. Yes, towards the, as we say, common grounds. But this is not what wise negotiation is all about. Wise negotiation is going to extremes, but on both sides. Yes, and so our observation is that only about 5% of people we've observed and looked at and analyzed in the context of our negotiation competitions are able to combine great substantive outcomes with building great relationships, as with repeated partners and repeated negotiation and different negotiation settings. Yes, which means not only you have to be trained, but even those who are trained, among those who are trained who join the context of our competition, still cannot really do it too well. Yes, so by now we have a fairly good understanding what it means to negotiate well. And it's conceptually no rocket science. It's easy to understand, but it's still hard to do. It's still hard to do. So I would say that my observation in business coincides with the results of our the published in the paper we published. Not many people are good negotiators. Yes, and that's why it's very important to modify our intuition with training. And it's extremely important because this is our only chance of moving from, gravitating towards the middle, yes, and into, let's say, looking for so-called efficiency improvements or Pareto improvements by using the techniques and tools which are out there. And as I said, very simple, but still not easy. It's still not easy to implement. So to answer your question, Stan. I see many people struggling. Well, it lies in the nature of my advisory work. I'm not approached to handle negotiations which are easy. Usually, negotiators can do a lot themselves, not necessarily efficiently or more efficiently, but at least they believe that many people believe they can negotiate well. When I get called is usually in situations which are extremely complex, and when there is a past history of, how do I say, of escalation. yes, of escalation, bad blood, destroyed relationships, and I immediately see in these situations that those who handle these processes were certainly not skilled negotiators. Certainly not skilled negotiators, and frequently we managed to turn it around. At least so far, my track record is not that bad. I think in all advisory work I've had a chance to accompany, we managed to find solutions both parties were happy with at the end. But in general, people are not good negotiators. To become better, we need to practice. We need to train. We need to change our intuitive reactions. And even if we practice and train, it's still not easy. Yes, it's still not easy. We need to practice and train even more to get better.
That is so interesting, man. I never thought about it this way. That negotiation is not an intuitive; it's against our nature in a way.
Yes.
To do it. What are some of the most effective trainings maybe you've been leading? By the way, guys, you have to join some of the classes of Remi or the trainings of Remi. I'm saying again, it was 2011. I'm telling you, it was like 2 weeks every day, role plays. Like Remi was tricking us to do stuff which we thought we knew, and then he will show us that what we were doing was something completely different, but there was a lesson there. So it was very experiential, and I felt we learned a lot back then. But maybe can you give us like what are some, how do we train negotiators effectively?
Oh, well, that's a very good question, Stan. This is something which one of the topics I have on my research agenda to focus on even stronger. I feel that in the field of negotiation research, we somehow started neglecting teaching. Thinking that we probably already know all about or what is relevant to know in that context. And we are, in my opinion, we are very far from that. But there are a couple of well-established facts in that area. So number one, training helps. Yes. So going through systematic training, regardless of with whom, as long as it's has solid foundations in science, which I'm strong believer in. As long as it has strong foundations in science, usually it should lead to similar effects. Meaning, realizing that first of all, what are our intuitive responses in certain negotiation settings, and then helping people override them with frontal cortex. Yes, meaning build routines with more simulations, build new routines that somehow override the old. Yes, just like we did back in the days at Aarhus University, and like we always keep on doing with my students. So it is learnable. Yes, we see when people go through this unlearning and learning exercise, they tend to do better in future repetitions. So there is a very clear, very evident learning effect between people who are unskilled and people after training. So that's number one: do the training. Yes, if regardless of how good you believe you are, go for still give yourself the luxury of a training session with the trainer of your choice. Number two, a very important characteristic of that training needs to be exactly the experiential aspect, meaning people need to realize how they intuitively react in certain situations. They need to feel it, yes, and they need to see what it leads to. Yes, and that's super important. That's super important because it changes completely the perspective. Yes, so imagine, what is the alternative to experiential learning? The alternative to experiential learning is someone explaining it how you would react. Yes, and that has no or very little teaching power. Yes, well, we will understand, but we will not know, or unlikely we will know how it feels. Which means going through this experience ourselves sets a reference point in our mind. And that's exactly the starting point of learning. I know how I do it. Yes, and I can recall how I did it at the beginning of our class. And then number three, give people a chance to modify that intuition, that intuitive response, if it needs to be modified. Yes, which means that's exactly the reason, Stoyan, why we did so many cases. Yes, because we usually, when I do it, I usually do one at the beginning of each module to sort of provide everyone with a reference point on their own intuitive responses in particular settings, and then to facilitate the learning process based on that reference point, and finish it with an opportunity to modify that intuitive reaction if, for some reason, it was not efficient or not effective. Yes, so I think these three. We don't want to dominate your podcast with pedagogical pedagogical advice for negotiation teachers, but I think these three recommendations would be a good start.
Thank you, Remi. And you've been working on a book. It's been 10 years in the making, which is, I mean, congratulations, first of all. Negotiators who changed, was it history? The world.
The world.
Negotiators who changed the world. Timeless lessons on leadership and negotiation. Everybody go check out the book, first of all. It's a big book.
It is.
Where did the motivation started? I mean, 10 years in the making. That's quite some time.
About 10 years, yes. I was just about to check when my first notes when they are from, but it might be about from the time when we met in Aarhus, maybe slightly later.
Maybe I'm part of the reason. Maybe you met me for coffee.
I'm sure, exactly.
You don't know,
sure
but I mean,
I'm sure you were.
I'm gonna take 0.1% credit for the book.
Hey, there you go. Take more. Take more. Yes, the idea has been buzzing in my mind for a while already, and the initial thought was a conversation we had many years ago about. And a question I asked in one of the conferences to one of the speakers about his perception of greatness in negotiation. So what does it mean, greatness? What does greatness mean? Or did he have examples, yes, of historical or contemporary negotiators who he found great or inspirational. Yes, this whole discussion took place in the context of our negotiation competition, and that was probably the reason why this thought started buzzing in my mind. You might remember we run a negotiation competition for students and one for professionals called the Negotiation Challenge, and ever since we started almost 20 years ago, we've been confronted with the necessity to answer the question, what does it mean to negotiate well? And in the first year, we sort of struggled with the methodology, and we kept on modifying it, changing and trying, experimenting new things, adding new dimensions. And at some point, we started observing the winners, and thinking, what do they have that others don't? And that was exactly the reason to sort of make this question a little bit more general or global, galactic. Yes, meaning why some people are better negotiators than others, and if we can notice these differences, what are the determinants of their greatness? And that was. And for many years, I didn't know how to start with the book project. And at some point, there was this conversation with, I think it was Paul Mertz, who was a great negotiator himself and a dedicated teacher based in The Hague, if I remember correctly, in the Netherlands. And he shared his admiration, or at least that he's the great negotiator. Someone who he would consider a great negotiator was Talleyrand. as this is a French diplomat, statesman, statesperson, and this sort of resonated with me very strongly. And first of all, I thought about writing this book myself. Started collecting materials, doing interviews with people, and at some point I realized that actually I would prefer to have a more diversified perception of greatness, as from different people based on different negotiators. And about a year and a half ago, I completely abandoned my initial concept and said, "Hey, let's do it as a community project. Let's write this book together." I reached out to negotiation professors and experts all around the world, as explaining the concept of the book and asking them whether they would be interested in drafting a contribution. And surprisingly, got more responses than I was hoping for. Apparently, this topic seems to be quite interesting also for experts and professionals. And out of that, we put together, I think, 28 chapters, if I remember correctly, or 29 chapters, something like that, written by people who only thing that they have in common is passion for negotiation. Some of them are negotiation professors, other are negotiation coaches. There are some practitioners, and I asked them to think about the personification of greatness as a person contemporary of a contemporary or a historical person who is a great leader and or great negotiator, and write a chapter about him or her. And that's exactly what happened. People started submitting their chapters, their ideas, and after the writing process itself, yes, it took only a year and a half. That's no problem. But the idea was maturing for, I don't know, probably 10 years, if not longer. I don't know exactly. And at the end, I think I cannot take all credit for this book, and never will want to. It's a collective view on greatness in negotiation, a view which is curated from people who know what negotiation is and what greatness is in that context, but also from people who are very diverse. Not only geographically, but also in terms of background, in terms of generations, and that was exactly the intention. I didn't want to sell one remedy, because I don't think there is one remedy or one answer to the greatness question. And instead, I wanted to expose our readers to different views on greatness, different views on greatness in negotiation and in leadership, and that's I think what this project did quite well.
Fascinating, Remi. And we can find so much inspiration by the example of some of these, we can call them master negotiators, I guess, even though they probably were not specifically negotiators. Many of those figures that are mentioned in the book and explored in the book. Can you maybe give us some? I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear some of the examples, and maybe some of the examples that you found fascinating, because you were the editor of, probably you went through all the chapters and you've been
several times,
working.
Unfortunately. That's the job of the editor. Editor has to read and keep on reading the same things over and over again.
But what were some of the chapters that you found kind of, I don't know, surprising maybe at first, or like they were like, oh, interesting, I never thought of that? Like, were there some, that you can maybe first that come to mind? I mean, you're welcome to open the book and just remind yourself, of course. There you go.
Yes, exactly. So let me give you a couple. I think I couldn't focus on one or two. There are many great personalities mentioned in the book. We can learn a lot about leadership and negotiation from. So it starts with philosophers and strategists. Then we have states builders and unity architects. Peacemakers and mediators, change makers and reformers, diplomats and deal makers. So it's not chronological. It's aggregated based on the main context in which these people were active or were active in, and we have Confucius, we have Jesus Christ, we have Machiavelli, right? We have Talleyrand, we have John Fitzgerald, JFK, we have Henry Kissinger, written by great friends and colleagues from around the world, by Shougang from China on Confucius, by Alain Lempereur on Machiavelli, who, by the way, teaches right now in Florence, which is a very nice coincidence because that's where Machiavelli was from. We have one on Talleyrand written by Paul Mertz and Bill Zartman, JFK, Angelo Monoriti, Antonio Atolico, and Henry Kissinger, written by Kerry Menkel-Meadow. And I could keep on reading. There are 30.
And by the way, those of you who are listening and watching us live, maybe you want to point out one of those names or the directions, so we can maybe kind of zoom in a little bit on the ones that you guys are interested in. So please let us know in the comments which of those figures or maybe the directions that you want us to zoom in a little bit on. But yeah, go ahead, Remi. I'm sorry.
Yes, and each of these leaders is looked at or analyzed from a particular angle that was important to the author. So, for example, let's take Jesus Christ. For example, he was analyzed from a perspective of very common leadership style called servant leadership. Yes, and the question is, how effective are servant leaderships as leaders, as negotiators? That's the question we try to ask with this chapter. For example, Talleyrand was an example of strategic adaptability, meaning firm but flexible. Yes, meaning he was the one who managed to, after a lost Napoleonic War, he was sent to the Congress of Vienna to negotiate the the order of the post-Napoleonic era. And the question was, how do you do it? You just lost a huge war. Yes, you just caused a lot of damage, a lot of pain and misery and deaths around Europe. How do you keep your place at the table? And he was extremely strategic with his approach to peace negotiations, post-Napoleonic peace negotiations, and managed not only to preserve the territorial integrity of France to a large extent, but also avoided a disaster when France would be partitioned or marginalized in Europe. His argument was, hey, if you guys want to have lasting peace, you cannot ignore us. Yes, I know we lost. I know we caused a lot of pain. Yes, we've understood. We got the message, but there's no future without us. And that was a very strong argument that Talleyrand made, and it was not the only context in which he demonstrated a combination of firmness and flexibility, which is highlighted by Paul and Bill in their great chapter.
Is there a lot of documents and papers that maybe explore what this gentleman did in the preparation process? Like, did he have his priorities? And I would imagine that it was also, working under extreme pressure, I guess, time limits, to be able to negotiate for France.
We know a lot about Talleyrand from his memoirs and from the autobiographies, some of which are behind me, and there are a lot of keys to his success. We don't know so much about preparation itself. Yes, at least I don't recall reading about preparation itself. What is very well documented are the negotiations he participated in. Yes, so that's definitely the major source of. What we know about him, his negotiation and leadership style. But there are also others, let's say more recent negotiators, where sources are more available. So, for example, one of the chapters One of the chapters that we wrote was on Angela Merkel. One was on Lech Wałęsa, where the sources are there, and it was very easy. We could even talk to some of those leaders. I had a chance to speak with the former president of Poland about the negotiation, how he perceived it. So the more contemporary, and not only myself, also other authors were able to base their chapters on their personal interviews. For example, Juan Manuel Santos, who is a Nobel Prize laureate from Colombia, in a great chapter written by Margarita Canal and her team and her co-authors. David Aponte and others, where actually we did have a chance to get a first-hand account on how it actually went, why it went like that, what are, from that person's perspective, what were the key elements, what were the challenges, how they overcame these challenges. So it varies a little bit, Sten. I think that's the answer I wanted to share. It varies depending on how far back we go.
Oh, that's super interesting, and I'm just trying to get also some specific ideas out of it. For example, let's start with maybe I'm emphasizing a little bit too much on him, but the Napoleonic gentleman,
Talleyrand.
yeah, I can never pronounce that. But um, what do you think were the key lessons for people listening from his style of negotiations? Would that be he has a very strong, clear priorities, and he was very steady with the reasoning? What made him successful?
That's a very good question. So there are. Let's zoom out first to understand why he was successful. First, actually, it's very interesting because he was originally a civil servant at the court of Louis the 16th, if I remember correctly. So the one right before Revolution, I think it must have been the 16th, and. When the French Revolution came, as although heads were rolling back and forth, the king was killed together with his family. Talleyrand managed to stay after a short exile. He came back to France and managed to stay and serve for the French Revolution, also in the capacity of a civil servant. A very high place. I don't remember the position that he had. Now, when French Revolution was replaced by Napoleon, Napoleon did exactly the same, saying, "I don't like him, but I need him." So regimes were, and then after Napoleon in the Restoration, is exactly the same thing happened. I think he ended up as an ambassador, French ambassador in London, if I remember correctly. In the meantime, head of government, prime minister, head of foreign services, minister of foreign affairs. So basically, he managed to stay on top regardless of the changing regimes. Yes, and not only changing regimes. Regardless of the fact that they were remorselessly killing each other during those changes, at least at the beginning. So and then many scientists, when looking at Talleyrand, they started thinking, so what was the key of his success? Yes, was it his cynicism? Because for some reason he managed to say the right things to the right people, or what were the factors that contributed to it? And there are, I think, there are a few hypotheses that explain it. Number one, uh, it's a fun fact, but many Talleyrand, although he was a bishop for a while, his parents wanted him to become clergy, which he abandoned very soon. Didn't like it too much, but had a very extensive network of women friends or female friends, yes, with whom he kept an extremely close and cordial relationship. And some authors claim that it was because of this network that he managed to pop up as the solution to problems of the changing regimes, despite the fact that he was involved in the previous with the previous governments. So that is very frequently mentioned as one of the key success factors. Knowing many influential women, yes, knowing many influential women who then managed to whisper the right words in the right ear at the right time. But above all, what he is very often praised for is that he was very pragmatic in terms of solutions. Yes, very pragmatic in terms of solutions, where he wouldn't focus on the exact specified outcome, but on a direction, yes, where he was very firm. So, for example, for the Congress of Vienna, he was very firm about France, making France a part of Europe, a part of the new order, yeah, new European order or world order. One can even say, although it would be maybe too megalomanic, but at least the new European order. But he didn't really care about how. So that's where he was flexible. As also with Napoleon, as he had his beliefs, he had his lines, but was very flexible in terms of how the agreements would precisely look like. And this is probably the main lesson, two main lessons, that we can draw from that chapter, or from his extremely successful career as a negotiator. Number one is networks help. I don't know whether gender split in the networks have an impact on their strength. Yes, in his case, it was a few authors indeed emphasized, let's say, the unproportional share of women in those networks, in his network. But networks help. And number two is, hey, know the direction in which you want to go, know your priorities, but be flexible in terms of how you get there, how you get there. Be flexible in terms of the exact provisions of your agreements. That's something that can be eloquently tweaked in the direction in which we want it to have it. But a prerequisite for knowing it is that you have your compass that consists of strategic priorities, and the flexibility with respect to exact agreements that allow you to achieve the most important points among your priorities.
Remi, that was amazing. That was amazing. Let's do a few more chapters. I mean, I hope everybody gets a copy of the book, and you can see how much depth is in there. And on the one side is the practical value, but it's also it's just like you're curious to learn all those stories and behind the scenes, like the historical value as well. But I think it would be interesting also. John F. Kennedy, is the case that you guys are exploring there the Cuban Missile Crisis, or is that
Yes, exactly.
course?
That's a great chapter written by Angelo and Antonio, who I think Angelo wanted
Shout out.
to listen to your podcast. Yes, shout out to Angelo. Yes, it's a great chapter on resolving a high tension situation from the 70s, where Russia tried to test, or Soviet Union, not Russia, Soviet Union tried to test placing nuclear missiles on Cuba. Yes, and we as mankind, we came so close to annihilation, nuclear annihilation, nuclear war, because at the beginning, or the first phase of this conflict, seemed irreconcilable. Yes, it seemed almost that a war is inevitable. Yes, and U.S. was thinking, how do we respond? How do we respond to the Soviets? To the Soviets' intention of placing nuclear missiles on Cuba. Yes, do we attack? Do we threaten? Do we place nuclear missiles in Europe to be closer to Soviet Union, just in case? And And I think this is one of those situations where, fortunately, the personal contact among leaders helped resolve tension. Yes, without this personal contact, we tend to formulate worst case scenarios in our mind. Yeah? Not only in this particular case, but in many interactions, human interactions that we might that we have every day. So, for example, recently I was chatting with a colleague of mine about the research design for a particular project, and there was a whole bunch of emails exchanged, and we know that it's very easy to misinterpret what is written in a negative sense, a more negative sense than it is likely to interpret it in a positive sense. Yes, I know, guys. Please raise your hands if it's never happened to you. It happens almost every day to all of us, to the best of us. Yes, and at some point we suggested, hey, let's meet, let's talk about it. And we realized we were able to solve these things within a few minutes. Yes. And that's one of the recommendations that flows from the Cuban Missile Crisis. Things look really bad on paper when we don't know the intentions. Yes. And our understanding of the situation changes when we get more information from the decision makers about them. Yes. And that was one of the one of the things that Kennedy did really well, insisting on personal contact between the leaders or between the governments, just to make sure that nothing bad happens in an uncontrolled way, despite the tension. And I think that was a game changer for that particular negotiation. I don't think it was the blockade or attack of Cuba or the perspective to do so, although some authors say that it played a significant role in Soviets, or let's say the credibility of U.S. threat played a significant role in terms of, let's say, interpreting potential scenarios, or modeling or simulating potential scenarios by the Soviets. They realized, hey, maybe they are serious. Maybe they are as serious as they claim. But I believe that was not the turning point. The turning point was personal contacts between negotiators, which were not there at the beginning, and at some point were installed. And I think from the moment they were introduced, the tension seemed, maybe not immediately, but gradually to decrease. And that's probably also something that we can learn, from that particular case. It's regardless of how bad it seems to be. Yes, sit down at the table with a person, if you can, with a person you think is your worst enemy, or try to give each other a call. Definitely do not write emails. That's the worst possible. Or don't send faxes or written correspondence. Sit down and try to talk. Yes, call each other, try to talk, and you will see as long as you can see a human being in your negotiation partner, I think you'll find a solution.
Fascinating. We could have not been sitting here because somebody might have pressed the button.
Yes, that's true. It was that close. Yes. It was that close. Strategic responses were already drafted to potential attacks. Each side was prepared to press the button. Yes, it was that close, indeed.
So, what about more contemporary times? You mentioned Angela Merkel.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's one of my favorite chapters.
Okay. You live in Germany.
Written by Peter Kesting, and with my modest support. I think Angela Merkel is one of those negotiators who, in our modern times, can serve as lighthouses and as role models on how negotiations could be conducted. Yes, there are. She is highly contested, probably in several countries, including her own. Recently, there's a mounting of criticism, on various accounts. But what she managed to do is she managed to navigate her country through one, two, three, four huge crises, as the financial crisis, debt crisis, Corona, also beginning of Russian invasion. Yes, and she with her leadership and negotiating style, she managed to do something which not many, or which, let me say it like this, which many her male leader colleagues, world leader colleagues, admired her for. Yes, and that is she did not have an ego in those negotiations. Yeah? She was always trying to find a solution. Yes, many attribute this characteristic to her education. She was a physicist. She's a doctor here. She has a doctorate in physics, and many think that let's say the scientific background that she had made her more prone to focusing on solving problems or finding solutions to problems at hand, rather than demonstrating that she was smarter, better, and more powerful than others. So what we noticed in many accounts of top politicians who negotiated with her at the time was the emphasis that she never brought herself as a part of the problem, as she brought herself as a part of a solution. As she always had this intention to find out more about the facts, get expert opinions, and formulate, based on those expert opinions, based on those facts, formulate judgments. Yes, and her judgments very frequently evolved over time. Yes, this is something which many analysts, biographers also have, and also we notice it in the cases that we analyzed, these four crises that she navigated through in her 16 years of in government, at the top of German government. We noticed that her relentless, her intention to seek for solutions, yes, remove her ego. Yes, I think it was Tony Blair. No, yes, I think it was Tony Blair indeed, who says in one of his interviews is that the secret of her success was the absence of ego. And I think it's an amazing advice to any negotiator. Your biggest strength is the source of your usually the source of your failure. And if you think you're great, as you're good in whatever you're doing, yes, usually it will create an ego, which will stand in your way in terms of finding better solutions. So she didn't have that. Yeah, she didn't have that. At least that's what many negotiation partners claimed about the interactions they had with her. Instead, she had this urge to solve problems. Yes. What is the problem? Let me understand. Give me the facts. What are the possible solutions? What are the consequences of those possibilities? And once she has understood, once she has understood, she says, "Okay, it seems to me that is the way." Yes, and this, as I said, it changed. Yes, a very plastic example, very prominent example was the financial crisis, the Lehman Brothers crisis, the first one, not the debt, but the first one that came from the U.S. Her first response is, "Why should we care?" That was her first reaction. Yes, it's not our problem. It's some U.S. banks are defaulting on are defaulting, and that's or some financial instruments are defaulting, and the banks are defaulting. So why should we care? Only after a few weeks she understood that, well, the banking system is interconnected. Yes, and there were especially two major German banks that were connected to Lehman Brothers in the U.S. and in their portfolio, and not doing anything in Europe would cause a banking Armageddon also to make it over the Atlantic. And that's when she changed her mind and started insisting on finding a systemic solution to heal the banking system within the EU. Yes, at least within the EU, but then later on also in Europe. A fascinating personality, one of the best negotiators of our times.
So very pragmatic, very curious, with no ego, and trying to understand what's what's putting herself in the shoes of the other side as well, I guess. Right? Just understanding where they come from, what do they want, and trying to just focus on solution.
Mhm. Yes,
Fascinating,
exactly.
man.
Especially solution orientation. That's something that we cannot deny Angela Merkel. She's criticized for many, has been criticized for many things, but certainly not for the fact that she didn't find a way out of, or did not constructively support finding the way out of the crises that we all went through in the last. By now it's more than 16 years, but by now it's probably 20 years already. Last 20 years of our history. Yeah. So that's something I think because of that she was highly respected around the world. As this absence of ego means that you let others shines, and it doesn't bother you if someone wants to be the star, as long as he or she keeps you helps you get to a solution. And this is something which not many politicians or experienced leaders have. Usually they have the feeling of anointment, of being special, being better, and that typically coincides with let's say high egos. Yes, she did not have that, and that's I think was a major source of her strength.
So we did cover a few historical political leaders. Do you have any business examples, for example, that somebody that comes to mind and that's covered in a book?
Ah, yes. Well, this is something that somebody already told me. Hey, you're focusing so much on philosophers, politicians, diplomats, and there's only one business person in the book. That's in a chapter written by Anuj Yaganathan. In India, it's Ratan Tata. The founder of the Tata concern, the conglomerate in India, and it's also an extremely nice example of how one can, with help of negotiation skills, one can build empires. Yes,
It's a massive
but
company, right?
yeah,
It's a
well,
pretty large.
it's a conglomerate of multiple companies, and I think a friend of mine told me, "Hey, you have to write a sequel about business people," and this is something which we might ultimately do at some point, because there might be interesting lessons also to learn from leaders of the business world. Yes, because politics, diplomacy, it's something that we are all exposed to, but very frequently, business leaders also have their convincing stories and lessons, which then offer lessons that we can learn from them, how we could become better negotiators.
So what was the lesson from the Tata guy? What was some of the his style?
I do not remember. I do not
Okay.
remember from the top of my head right now. I must admit, I would have to
That's all good.
reread this chapter. But I'm sure Janusz would be able to say it immediately. To say it immediately.
But by
But
the way,
yes,
Remy, I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait to read the book now after all these teasers that you're giving us here with the stories, the lessons. I feel like even if you're not interested in history or politics, it's something so relatable, and you can take that and implement it in your own life or profession. Many of those ideas and lessons, like for example, let your ego out of the room. Like there's so many of those. So I can't wait to read the book. But since we're getting close to the end of our conversation, I don't want to keep you. I want to keep you here for 3 more hours, but I know you have other interesting and important things to do. Um, Maybe let's finish with Jesus Christ, um, servant leadership. I never thought about Jesus in a context of negotiation, but I'm actually curious to hear what are some of the ideas and thoughts in the chapter about Jesus Christ?
Oh, many, many. And see, the interesting part of servant leadership is effectiveness. And how can we be effective and still be servants? How can we be effective leaders and still be servants? Which is a sort of a part of a more general or stronger debate in studies of leadership. Um, is it possible? The evidence is weak, but there is some evidence that it is possible. And it works through the motivations of the followers, or to increase motivation of the followers. So the question I usually ask my students when I teach a course on leadership and negotiation is, to what extent do they believe that was Jesus successful or not? Was he a successful leader or not? Because ultimately, what happened? I mean, we know the story, right? He was killed by the people he negotiated with, but at the same time, he managed to create a legacy that is still impacting millions of us, and throughout the centuries, probably billions of us around the world. So, was he successful or was he not? Yes, that's a very very interesting debate, which usually produces a lot of interesting interactions or interesting discussions, but. By now, I think there are a couple of how do I say? There are a couple of negotiation tactics that Jesus liked using, such as, for example, formulating smart questions. As so, he's if we think about servant leadership, rarely tells, but very frequently asks. So, what do you think about? And then what follows after about is usually a question which is formulated in a particular way that makes the responder think um, about the particular course of action. Yes, so no one so did anyone condemn you? So no one condemned you. I do not condemn you either. So where are those accusers, right? When he negotiates with a woman caught on adultery, when he negotiates with Pharisees, he also usually asks questions, and this is something very very interesting, I think, as a negotiation tactic, something that we've known at least since Socrates, right? Very famous way of conducting a dialogue by asking question rather than telling what we believe is right or should be done. That might correlate. This is also research to be done. Might correlate with servant leadership better than with other leadership styles, because it puts the person, the follower, in the shoe of the decision maker, right? So what do you think? Yeah, we should do. So how and by choosing this way of communicating, we tend to preserve or strengthen the relationship between follower and leader, and at the same time, and we tend to empower the followers to do what the leader actually intends to do. So this is, I think, something. If I was to pick one particular feature of this chapter, I would connect the negotiating style through strategically chosen question and the as an element, or as a consequence of the servant leadership style.
That is fantastic, man. Thanks for sharing. We haven't really covered that before, but I would imagine this is core part of your advisor as well, the ability to ask the right questions at the right time.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Usually the best negotiators, they don't tell, they ask. That's true.
Remi, we talking about questions. We have a question that's probably a difficult and long answer, requiring a long answer, but I'll put it on the table if you have the time. I'm not sure you have the time, but we have Julia Marco, and she's asking, what about Ukraine? Is there any hope diplomacy can end this war? how who on your opinion should negotiate? That's a
Huh.
it's a
That's a
big question.
very difficult and yet strategically important question for the future of Europe, maybe of the world. Um, so I have only a generic answer, and I apologize that I'm not able to answer these questions more specifically. Wars typically end at the negotiating table. As not all of them, but most of them do. As do I believe that this conflict, Russia's aggression on Ukraine and full-scale assault, is ripe for resolution? I do not. I do not think that it's that the especially Putin's government is ready to talk seriously about peace. Uh, uh, and I cannot even at the moment. I find it hard to imagine how a peace would look like. Yes, because on the one hand, what Putin demands is significant territorial concessions from Ukraine, uh, and uh, and we know what happened already before. Once an aggressor was appeased in this way, as we had it with Czechoslovakia before the Second World War with Chamberlain, who, by giving Czechoslovakia to Hitler, came back claiming that he's brought peace. There's nothing more wrong than this. I think if aggressors, when aggressors feel that through aggression they can get concessions that will only perpetuate this behavior and might motivate to future aggression, to repeating aggressions in the future. So I don't know how to resolve it. I think the only obvious solution that we have at the moment is to support Ukraine in their fight, as because this attack was unprovoked by any means, um, and and by imposing sanctions. Yes, and I think the only chance that we have for the situation to change, I feel, is making Russian economy bad enough, so that people, as much as I have friends in Russia, many friends in Russia, and with close ties and relationships, as much as it might hurt them personally, it might be the only way of making them realize, hey, listen, making Putin realize, listen, you've done wrong and you need to step back. You need to stop this war. Right now, he doesn't have any motivation to do so. His Russian economy is doing okay still ish. Yes, it's changing. I think it's getting worse and worse. But the only that's not a resolution, but the only way of going forward that I see, at least in the short and mid-term, is our sanctions. Yes, ostracizing, keeping them away from all sorts of events, all sorts of communities. I would even be stricter in terms of sports. Hey, as long as this war is going on, Russia needs to be isolated. Yes, it's they are the aggressors. This is very clear, and and until they change that, they should. People should feel it. People should feel it that their government is not doing the right thing. And I know that it's easier to say than to do. Right? I mean, the possibility of starting social resistance, in a country that is governed the way Russia is or has been in the last year. That's we know how it ended with Navalny and others. So it's not easy. But the way to peace is, I think, not through appeasement but through sanctions.
Mm. Thanks, Remi, for covering that as well. There's actually a bunch of other questions, but I see we're running out of time now. Remi, you let me know if you want to take one more, or we
Sure, go
have to
ahead. Go
maybe.
ahead. Yes, go
All
ahead.
right. So we have Omer, Zach. I'm not sure he was one of your students as well, but he was also in Aarhus. Omer, good to see you, brother. So he's referring back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he says, "Don't you think that Cuban Missile Crisis proved that the Soviet Union and Cuba had a lot of power than the U.S., more power than the U.S., and the conflict of aggression made them the winners, meaning minimize the U.S. ability to win, or define win similar to the Vietnam War in a sense." They have avoided World War III, but at what cost? That's what his comment and question is.
I never thought about it this way, but now spontaneously reacting to it. Very often we're moving the debate on in terms of when we analyze negotiation towards who is more powerful, who showed more power in a particular negotiation, and that is rarely the goal of negotiating. As the goal of the Cuban Missile Crisis was to avoid the war. Imagine, guys, if U.S. wanted to demonstrate how powerful they were. What would they have done? They would have probably invaded, not even blockade. They would have probably invaded Cuba. And the moment they had invaded Cuba, the finger on the trigger, on the button, on the nuclear button, would probably have slipped, would have been pressed. So, even if they did, yes, even if let's assume a hypothetical scenario, yes, U.S. wants to, by all means, demonstrate how powerful they are. Yes? That changes the analysis of the situation, might incline them to do something that would end the war, the world. Yes? So was that really the objective in this negotiation? I tend to think that the objective was to resolve the tension around placing the missiles on Cuba, and I think not both parties. It was U.S. who had vested interest in removing, or let's say, not allowing nuclear weapons to be stationed so close to its border. So, have they lost? I'm not sure. The more I think about it, the more I think the more I tend to believe that the resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis helped move the Cold War back to Europe. And from the US perspective, that's exactly what they wanted. Yes, then it was back again, the Warsaw Pact with NATO, with the Western countries in Europe, and not Cuba and the US. So after 74, we never heard about Cuba as a potential source of threat in the context of the Cold War between the US and Soviet Union. So would I subscribe to the thesis that they've lost power? Even if it wasn't the purpose of that particular negotiation, I think they managed to resolve the situation in a smart way and move the focus of these tensions back over the Atlantic to Europe.
Thank you, Remi. Final question. It's coming from one of your colleagues, Dr. Choi. So he's saying, "Hi, Dr. Smolinski. This is Dr. Choi, HALM5 from Maine, USA. I wanted to get your thoughts on the pros and cons of the Trump administration's negotiation tactics in the global economy, and also what you think could be a smart strategy for negotiating effectively with that kind of approach."
Why am I getting all these difficult questions today? Yes.
Right. It's not like, what's your favorite color, right?
Exactly. Yes. You should ask, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite book? Right. These should be the questions asked in this podcast.
No pressure.
So, what do I think about it? Well, it's a topic which we're currently analyzing, by the way. Yes, which we're currently analyzing with Dan Druckmann and Lynn Wagner. We're looking at tariff negotiations and analyze. We're analyzing the range of responses that countries affected by the Liberation Day tariffs demonstrated in directly afterwards. So I cannot answer the second part of the question, but in a very interesting paper published in Negotiation and Conflict Management Research, NCMR, on Trump tariffs, Sinisha Vukovic and his co-author is making a bold statement, saying that the way negotiations are conducted by the Trump administration is leading to a new world order. Yes, where partnerships or strategic partnerships need to be rethought, yes, reshaped, and where, for example, uh, allies who relied too much on the U.S. as a source of economic and military support in times of crisis need to look for their own source of military and economic power. And I sort of agree with this view and with this statement. Highly recommend the paper in NCMR on Trump negotiation, Trump tariff negotiations, because for many years, especially in Europe, we tend to rely on the U.S. as a peace as a source of peace guarantees, yes, or as a partner who in the time of need is always there. Yeah? And I think the new administration and its approach to prioritizing domestic versus international policy has led to a revision of this approach, meaning now Europe is seeking its own strength, and I think from a strategic perspective, it's a good development, yes, because for many years we were relying on somebody else who is very far away across the Atlantic and not directly involved or maybe even now interested in our problems. So I think the EU has understood it, or many European countries have understood, especially the closer to Russia, the closer they are to Russia, the sooner they understood it, that we might be on our own, and we might have to seek for our own source of strength, both in negotiations, as well as in deterrence. Yes, so I think world is changing. Yes, I think the world is changing, and the next 3 years of the term in office are likely to bring or sustain or even increase the uncertainty with respect to the strength of the alliances that have been forged 60, 70 years ago. And that pretty much sends a very clear, or has sent a very clear signal around the world. Hey, guys, focus on your own strength. Yes, because there might be times. I hope not, but there might be times when you need it, and then you need to rely on whatever you have at hand. Yes, the assets you have at hand, be it economic or military.
By the way, Dr. Choi officially apologized for the complexity of the question. Remi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us, for being so gracious with your time. I just want to, once again, before we finish, can you show us the book once again?
Here we go.
For everybody who's here, the book, a little bit higher up, yes. Negotiators Who Changed the World, guys. It's a brand new book. We'll post the link in the comments. We'll post the link in the description. Remi, maybe if you can give us the final kind of message, how could people get in touch with you? Because I know that you're not just starting teaching in a university and in academia, you're also doing consulting, speaking, you have a book. Can you give us an idea how can people get in touch, and how can you help the businesses out there, the professionals that are listening to the podcast?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stan, for mentioning this. It's very easy. There are only 3 Remi Smolinskis around the world. One is a kickboxer, one is a ballet dancer, and the third one is a negotiation professor. Choose the right one, guys, depending on what you're looking for. If you want to kick someone's butt, that's not me. Yes, but if you're looking for support in negotiations or conflict resolution, I would be very happy to work together with you. You will easily find me. I'm working at HHL, Leipzig Graduate School of Management, based in Germany. And I think you should be able to find me very easily on our university website.
Thank you once again for being with us. Thanks everybody for making it to the end of the episode. Nearly 90 minutes, probably the longest episode we had. I just couldn't stop myself. Remi, once again, massive thank you for being here. Again, being super grateful to you, to your time, to your knowledge, insights. I can't wait to read the book. I hope everybody gets a copy of the book. Go check it out. Is it going to be on audio as well at some point, or?
That's a very good question. I
Okay.
have no idea. I hope so, but
Okay.
for now, it's just ebook and paper.
And paper. All right. Well, thanks everybody. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to Productivity Mastery on your favorite platform. 230 episodes, so a lot of great people there. We'll keep on bringing you fantastic guests like Remi. So have a great day right now, and see you guys next week once again. Another great episode with the former CEO of the largest sports retailer, Decathlon. So she'll have a lot to share as well. Make sure to tune in, and see you once again next week. Bye bye.
Thank you, Stoyan. Thank you.